We love to tell ourselves that human history is a beautiful march of brilliant minds. We picture immaculate laboratories, sleepless geniuses, and calculated visionaries changing the world. That is a lie. The truth is much darker, much stupider, and far more embarrassing. Humanity didn't progress through sheer brilliance. We survived because our ancestors were magnificently, historically bad at their jobs. They weren't trying to save the world. They were just incompetent. Welcome to the wrong wiki. In August 1928, a bacteriologist named Alexander Fleming decided he needed a vacation. So he packed his bags and left his London laboratory. But Fleming was a notorious slob. Instead of cleaning up before leaving, he left a mountain of live Staphylococcus bacteria cultures rotting in his lab sink. In September, he returned. A normal scientist would immediately wash the dishes. But Fleming just started sorting through his biological trash. That's when he noticed something weird. A stray airborne mold had drifted through an open window, landed on a dish, and was literally executing his bacteria. Did he celebrate? No. He almost threw the whole thing into the garbage because he didn't realize its true value. He just thought it was an annoying contamination. He published a dry, boring paper about his accidental mold, calling it Penicillin, and then completely abandoned the project because isolating it was too much work. 10 whole years passed. Fleming did absolutely nothing to turn his messy mistake into an actual mass-producable medicine. Instead, in the late 1930s, an entirely different team of dedicated scientists at Oxford found his old paper, did the actual hard work, and turned the mold into a miracle drug. But guess who got all the historical glory? In 1945, Alexander Fleming won a Nobel Prize essentially for being terrible at doing his dishes. If Fleming had possessed even a basic sense of hygiene, modern medicine would be set back by decades. Laziness literally saved the world. In 1945, a military engineer named Percy Spencer was working on weaponized radar technology for World War II. He wasn't trying to change your kitchen. He was working on death rays. While standing next to an active magnetron tube, he felt a strange, warm sensation in his trousers. His chocolate bar had completely liquefied inside his pocket. A normal person would immediately worry about deadly radiation or permanent organ damage. But Percy just got curious about physics. To test his theory, he went and grabbed a handful of raw popcorn kernels and held them right in front of the invisible military waves. Within seconds, the room turned into a chaotic war zone of exploding white kernels. History's first microwave popcorn was born out of pure military hazard. Next, he decided to test a whole, raw chicken egg. He and another engineer leaned in dangerously close to watch what would happen. The internal pressure built up instantly, and the egg violently detonated directly into his co-worker's face. Yes, modern cooking technology is built on a foundation of exploding breakfast. Realizing the financial potential of accidental radiation cooking, Spencer's company immediately patented the idea under the name the Radarange. But don't picture the convenient little appliance on your counter. The first commercial microwave was a terrifying, 6-foot-tall, 750-pound metal monster. It cost thousands of dollars and required its own plumbing system. But hey, human stupidity and a ruined pair of pants officially changed the culinary world forever. In the early 1990s, scientists at Pfizer were developing a brand new chemical compound called UK92480 in a small, dreary village in Wales. The goal was noble. They wanted to create a medication to relax blood vessels and treat severe chest pain and heart disease. But the clinical trials were a devastating failure. The drug did almost nothing to alleviate heart conditions. The project was practically dead. As per protocol, the nurses went around the hospital ward to collect the remaining unused experimental pills from the patients. But the old Welshmen fiercely refused to give the medication back. They protected those failed heart pills like gold. When confused nurses investigated further, they discovered the male patients were all awkwardly lying face down in their hospital beds out of sheer embarrassment. The drug wasn't dilating the blood vessels near the heart. Instead, it was aggressively redirecting blood flow to a completely different, much more sensitive part of the male anatomy. Pfizer was about to burn this failed formula in a chemical incinerator, but realizing the sudden turn of events, they immediately pivoted their entire research. They rebranded the failed heart medication as Viagra. It became the fastest-selling drug in pharmaceutical history, generating billions of dollars overnight. They failed to save anyone's heart, but they inadvertently saved their own corporate bank accounts through the power of pure, clinical awkwardness. Dr. John Pemberton was a Confederate soldier who survived a brutal saber wound during the Civil War. To manage his agonizing pain, he became severely addicted to morphine. As a pharmacist, he desperately tried to mix a medical concoction in his lab to cure his own crippling drug addiction and constant headaches. His first semi-successful invention was called Pemberton's French Wine Coca, a literal alcoholic nerve tonic laced with real cocaine leaves. But in 1885, his home city of Atlanta passed strict temperance laws. Alcohol was banned. Pemberton's best-selling medicine was suddenly illegal. Forced to adapt, he removed the wine and spent months boiling a thick, heavily carbon-sweetened, non-alcoholic syrup to hide the bitter taste of the medicine. One afternoon at Jacob's Pharmacy, a customer walked in with a headache. The assistant clumsily mixed Pemberton's thick medicinal syrup with fizzy, carbonated water instead of tap water. The customer drank the fizzy mistake and loved it, realizing it tasted better as a refreshing soda than a bitter headache cure. Coca-Cola was officially born. But Pemberton's morphine addiction grew worse. Sick, dying, and desperate for quick cash, he sold the rights to his secret recipe to business partners for a few $100s. In 1888, John Pemberton died entirely penniless, suffering from stomach cancer and completely oblivious to what his creation would become. The businessman who bought his accidental recipe turned Coca-Cola into a multi-billion-dollar empire. The man who invented it died in poverty. The mistake he brewed conquered the planet. In 1895, German physicist Wilhelm Roentgen was conducting electricity experiments with cathode tubes inside a pitch-black laboratory. To observe the rays, he wrapped his tube in thick black cardboard. Yet he noticed a random barium screen across the room was faintly glowing with a strange green light. According to known physics at the time, light shouldn't pass through solid black cardboard. Roentgen realized some unknown invisible ray was passing right through it. He placed his hand in front of the invisible path of the rays to block them. But when he looked at the screen, his flesh was gone. He was staring directly at his own naked bones. Roentgen didn't feel like a scientific hero. He was utterly terrified. He genuinely believed he was hallucinating, losing his sanity, or being haunted. For nearly 2 months, he kept the discovery a secret, eating and sleeping in his lab. Finally, he dragged his wife, Anna Bertha, into the dark room to prove he wasn't mad. He exposed her hand to the rays for 15 minutes. When Anna saw her own skeleton and the floating wedding ring on her bone, she screamed, "I have seen my own death," and fled. The scientific world was stunned. Roentgen was awarded the very first Nobel Prize in Physics in 1901 for this accidental discovery of X-rays. But Roentgen possessed a strict, unyielding moral code. He refused to patent his discovery, publicly declaring that X-rays belonged to all of humanity and should be free. Because of his intense idealism, he never made a single cent from his invention. Following World War I, Germany's economy collapsed, and Roentgen died completely bankrupt and starving, while his nightmare rays saved millions of lives. So, the next time you completely mess up a project in school, leave your dishes unwashed, or make a mistake at work, don't feel bad. You might not be a failure. Maybe you're just one step away from a terrible mistake that will change the course of human history. But let's be honest, you're probably just bad at your job. This was the wrong wiki. Subscribe and like